Thank you for viewing this YouTube archive of a Conscious Consumer Network broadcast. Please feel free to share it far and wide. Check out our weekly broadcast guide for weekly updates on scheduled broadcasts. Help keep us on the air by contributing to our network support fund. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or get in touch via email. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
Well, welcome again to Now and Zen, my new radio format. That's been a lot of fun. It's been a real honor meeting some wonderful people. This is, I guess, the 6th episode. And I'm extremely honored and very, very excited to have a very dear friend and someone who's been instrumental in my personal awakening and has affected millions of lives worldwide so profoundly and continues to do so. And that's the amazing David Icke. He's here, and we're going to be having some discussions about what's going on and hearing his perspective on what's happening, how he views what's going to transform depending on humanity's decisions. And anyway, without further ado, I'd like to welcome you, David. Thank you so much for coming on. It's just great to meet you, and this is really a pleasure.
It's a pleasure, Zen, after all this time.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I remember when the first time I saw you live, I saw you in Los Angeles at your event in Santa Monica. And I wrote you about it. I did a review, and I wrote you about it saying, man, there was a special energy. Something happened there. And I remember you wrote back and said, yeah, you recognize that. Something really freaky was stepping up. There was another level kicking in, and I could clearly feel it. And I felt that way with you for the longest time, that this sympathetic, empathetic, energetic connection. And, as we know, we're tapping into what's really going on. But that was a very special event. And I remember at first it looked like there weren't that many people, and it just kept filling up. Remember, the audience just kept coming in, till it topped right up. It was remarkable. And the response was really quite something.
Yeah, when I was minding my own business in the late 1980s, 1990, I was presenting sport for the BBC, and I was the national spokesman for the Green Party. And suddenly my life dramatically changed by a series of what you might call paranormal, though they're actually perfectly normal experiences. And I ended up... You okay?
Yeah.
I ended up in a psychic's front room because I had this feeling of a presence around me for a year before I went to see her in the... it was actually in March 1991, so 25 years ago this month, actually, the end of this. And this psychic, I went to see her because I wanted to see if she'd pick up what was going on around me, this presence where I never felt alone, even when I was. There was something there. And I never told her anything that was going on, but on the 3rd visit, she started picking something up. Mm-hmm. And she said I was going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets and all the things that I've done. And that there was a force, what I would call an awareness, that was going to guide me through this. And the reason I say that in regard to what you just said, Zen, is because at that time, I was told through these, if you like, sources, that there was a massive vibrational change coming that was going to act like a spiritual alarm clock for people and wake humanity up from its coma. And that those that were more awake were going to be affected by it first, And then people who at that time were solid gold asleep were going to be affected by it. And the first book I wrote, in a bit of a daze trying to work out what was happening to me, because amazing things started happening in my life. And, I can understand it now. I didn't then. What's going on? And I called it Truth Vibrations, because that was the name I gave to this energetic change, information change, frequency change that I was told was coming. And of course, as we all know, if you go back to 1991, there was virtually no sign whatsoever that there was any wake up coming. But as we speak here now, literally 25 years later to the month, anyone who's been on this journey for any length of time will be able to see the fantastic transformation that's taking place in the gathering enormous numbers of people who are now prepared to look at life and themselves and the world in a different way, from a different perspective. And these events that I do, and I've been doing them now for a long time, 2 decades. When you're on the stage, you do feel an energy. I mean, it is an extraordinary energy, and I have noticed that energy changing, getting more powerful, getting more in terms of clarity. So when I'm going on this world tour, which is starting in July in Australia, then to America in September, Europe after that, I'm going to be very interested to see what the energy is going to be like, because I haven't been on it around the world doing this now since 2011. I've done the ones from Britain, in big events in Britain. But even those events in Britain in 2012 and then 2014, right, the energy was different. The energy had changed, and I keep using this word, clarity. It has clarity, and my experience as this has gone on is, people say the more you know, the more you know there is to know, and that's the kind of truism, and that's right. But the more you know, in my experience, the simpler it gets. Again, the word, the more clarity you get in what's going on in the world, and you start to filter out information and things that were in and of themselves interesting and fascinating, and in and of themselves relevant. But you start to filter those out, and what's left is the simple themes, supported by detail, of course, but the simple themes that are before you. And in that way, it doesn't get more complex. It doesn't get more complicated the more you know. It gets simpler and easier to put the puzzle pieces in place, because it's becoming more and more clear the dynamic that's going on in the world, and why the world is as it is, and what we need to do to make it different to what it is.
Exactly. It's a refining process. It's breaking down, and as a result, you've got this awakening mass of people at all levels, all walks of life, able to perceive clearly what's happening around them in an instant. They don't have to figure it out. They're, it's like those, what do you call it? Kaleidoscopic lens. It turns, and all of a sudden, it gets clearer and clearer, and people are able to not only perceive it, but they're learning to actually put one foot in front of the other and putting things into action. And that's what blows my mind, is witnessing these things. A lot of people can't spot those changes. I try to help people in that regard, but what's going on is just an amazing thing. The way you described it is just perfect.
Well, what you just described about, people suddenly start to get it is very easily explained. In a book I've just had published called Phantom Self, I talk about, among many other things, the program, what I call the program. And that's the perception download that starts when you leave the womb, indeed even before, through the mother's perceptions that can get passed on genetically. And you go through a process through not very long now where you're just with your parents before you hit the education system, and the state starts downloading to you the nature of everything. It's an amazing thing when you take a breath and you take a step back and you look at it, to realize that you come into this world and immediately you are impacted by the perceptions of parents who've been through the same system, and not all of them, but most of them have downloaded it. And so they're starting to pass it on to you immediately, not through malevolence, but because they think it's the right thing. That's what they've been persuaded it is. But then in 3 years, 4 years after you arrive in this world, you're suddenly sitting at a desk. There's an authority figure in front of you telling you what to think, what not to think, what's right, what's not right, what's credible, what not credible, when you've got to be there, when you can leave, when you can eat, when you can go to the toilet. And then this goes on through higher and higher education. I mean, if you think about it, you've taken a mind in its very earliest years in this reality, and right the way from age 3, 4, right the way through to 18, nearly 20, it can go through a almost daily download of the state's version of everything. And of course, you have these things in schools and universities called exams, which is a test to see whether by the state to see whether you've downloaded its reality program. And so you then reach the point, say, when you leave university, and you go off into your specialization. You go off to be a scientist or a doctor or a politician or a journalist or a CEO, and you take with you all of those people into those different professions. You take the base prime perception download that almost everyone goes through. Different cultures may have a slightly different download, but it's still the state's download. And then, of course, you go out into these professions, and these professions then support each other. When there's a medical story, the journalist doesn't go to an alternative practitioner. He goes to a doctor, because his information download is that doctors are about health, and that's what you have to go through. They're the experts, not those people actually heal people. You want to know about reality, so you're a journalist. You go to a scientist, and you get the song sheet version of reality, which is a joke, and so it goes on. And then you've got the media constantly confirming that your downloaded sense of everything is true. You've got all your peer pressure telling you the same and ridiculing and marginalizing you if you have another opinion. And so what happens is the program focuses attention, if people would look at it, overwhelmingly in the five senses. And so from the five senses interacting immediately with the world around us, if you don't have access to more expanded awareness, which everyone has access to if they take it, beyond the five senses, then when you're trying to get a fix on the world, what's happening in world events, what life's about, what death's about, what anything's about, you're looking into the five sense world for information to get a fix on it. And what's coming back at you? The system download from media, education, science, medicine, all of it. And so people go through their lives being aware of only a tiny, tiny fraction of possibility, and their attention is focused on everything via the intellect, the five sense mind, if you like. And then, not least because of these truth vibrations, the bubble, the five sense bubble, the download bubble, starts to thin, and in places starts to leak, and in comes the wider awareness that we have, which has a much more expanded perception of everything. And so slowly but surely, the download, the program, starts to get challenged. And it's like, and the challenge is, well, you know, this doesn't make sense to me anymore like it did before. And when you said that, you know, people know, that's because when you access expanded awareness beyond the program, you're entering a level that does know. I mean, when we have intuition, what do we call it? We call it an intuitive knowing. The reason we know when we have intuition, rather than my intuition's just working it out, it don't work like that. Your intuition just know. I just know. It's because your intuition is connecting with levels of awareness beyond the program. The program, because it's in the madhouse land of bewilderment, is always trying to work it out, trying to get facts and make sense of facts. And the facts don't make any sense, so you're bewildered and you can't understand what's going on. You get to that level of intuitive knowing, which is just expanded awareness, which anyone can do, and suddenly the clarity's there. You can see it. It's obvious. You just know. And that's the difference. But of course, when you access a level of knowing in a madhouse, bewildered realm of thinking, of course, the bewildered realm thinks you're crazy, because people perceive credibility on the basis largely of what they perceive to be normal. And of course, although the perception download is insanity on a stick, it's all pervading and thus becomes normal. So madness becomes normal, thus madness becomes credible, and challenging the madness becomes not normal, thus not credible. And so you've got this process going on all the time. And in that, those few lines of description, you have the reason why people suddenly start to see the world differently and kind of know things they didn't know before, and why they get the reaction they do when they start to awaken and express their new perceptions of life.
So true. I mean, the way you explain things, I have to say at this point, when I discovered you back during my full-on awakening, I feel like I've been through many stages of it, from my first, psychedelic experiences in college, getting into mysticism, and then you go through all these different cycles in life. But the full-on awakening that happened when I discovered you, what I found so empowering and so, I guess, elucidating is the way you break things down and always bring it to a sense of empowerment. You, as deep as you get into the darkest possible areas of research, you always bring it back to a place of empowerment, a place where there is an ultimate solution available to everybody. And I've patterned much of my work after you, David, because of that, because this is what people need to hear. They need to know these realities. We can't be afraid of them, yet they've got to get through them to an amazing realm of empowerment, infinite potential. And you explain it so clearly, and have helped so many people in this regard. So I just wanted to note that, and it's well noted. I mean, you're very appreciated, and I'm not just blowing smoke at you. This is really something very important and dear to me, and I have told this about you on many occasions. Because of its nature and the nature of your books and the way you explain things, and I'll direct people there, and that's no doubt why you get harassed and hassled by people who can't handle the simplicity ultimately, and nor the solutions, where that are available to everybody. But I was thinking this morning about this subject. I mean, you put it so beautifully in this paradigm of your new book. And I was thinking this morning how everything, this download, all it is it's very archontic. It's a synthetic information. There's nothing creative about it. And what they do, call them they, is suppress creativity in the human spirit from the very womb, as you said, all the way up. And everything they do is only imprinting, like you said, it's synthetic information. There's nothing creative. There's nothing new. All they can do is copy. And that's why the archontic, the Gnostic teachings are so helpful to so many people, because it really, it brings this spiritual realm into a very practical understanding of how they operate to control the human mind. And another aspect that I've been thinking a lot about lately is this whole idea of how the child is denied its spiritual nature from the outset. And what that causes in psychological terms is a sense of abandonment. And this is passed on to every child. There's not a parent that doesn't pass down to their child this abuse syndrome of denying the child its true nature because they're not aware of it. Very rare if it happens at all. And then people spend the rest of their life trying to find approval from the missing mother, the missing father figure, the lost divine feminine, the lost divine masculine, whatever you want to call it. And they plow through their lives trying to put the pieces together and try these different roles out. And what I've been finding amongst those who are continue to graduate through this awakening process is we're all being challenged with new levels of change. Awakenings, as you know, is a process. Some people think, well, I'm awake or I'm not awake. Well, it's a process. We have always had more to activate. We have tools at our fingertips, spiritual empowerment that we're only barely consciously aware of. We know it's out there. We want to activate it. And I'm really excited about these things coming to life more and more in people. But we're going through changes. We're going through challenges. We're going through redefinitions of our lives, even those of us who've been into this for a long time and study it so intensely. It's a growing process. And as you said, any wise person will say, the more you know, the more you don't know. But the intuitive knowing really kicks in big, and it becomes simpler. But wow, I mean, what a thrilling ride! There couldn't be a better time to be alive. I'm sure you agree with that.
Yeah. In simple terms, if you deny the parents their awareness of their, if you like, spirituality, you deny the child almost totally and almost all the time, and certainly in the formative years. But for me, all these things about abandonment, loss, isolation, aloneness, people put that in the context of the world they are directly experiencing. So it's abandoned by parents, abandoned by this, alone, left alone. Why could you do this to me? I have this sense of loss. I have this sense of sadness, and you find, if you like, earthly reasons to explain how you feel. But for me, Zen, it all is an expression of the disconnection from true self. Because that awareness, which is isolated in the five senses, very systematically by that which is behind the system, it has a sense of being unconnected. Although it's not conscious to most people, that there is a sense of disconnection, a sense of loss, a sense of abandonment almost. From the time I was a little child, from the earliest time I can remember, I had a background noise of sadness. I mean, you'd do things and you'd laugh but when you were alone, when you had pondering time, there was this sadness. And the more that I've kind of opened my own awareness and started to understand things more, the more I can relate that sadness to two things. One, subconsciously knowing that there's a disconnection here, and it's not anything like the full magnitude of who we are. And the other part of it is the sadness, and I still have this part, not so much the first, the sadness of knowing what the world could be like, while at the same time seeing as it is. Now, my own, if you like, journey, I had those amazing experiences in 1990 and what have you. But after that, I was accessing, obviously, this information about reality, and which was challenging the norms. And my question, first of all, was, why isn't this taught in the schools? Why don't we see this stuff in the media? And then when you ask that question, of course, and you seek an answer, you find very quickly because it's suppressed. And then the next question is, why is it suppressed? And suddenly you find yourself on this step-by-step journey into uncovering this vast hidden hand conspiracy, which is at its foundation is very simple. It appears to be complex in all the facets and faces that it takes in doing it. Right. But at its foundation, it's very simple. It is to hold humanity in a state of awareness, a state of attention and perception, which is isolating, if you like, incarnate awareness from infinite awareness. And without that chasm, without that disconnection, it's not really a disconnection because you can't disconnect it. What it is, it's a disconnection of the sense of its existence and thus its influence upon perceptions in the five senses. Once you bridge that gap, everything starts to change. I mean, people say to me, how have you uncovered all this information? How have you done this? How have you done all that? And I say, well, if David Icke, 5 sense name, family history, life story, race, country, had sought to do this, I'd still be on book 1. The reason it's possible is because of connecting with something that is beyond this reality, which can then guide you down the road. I mean, we'll all have this experience that have done this, but, my experience was after that meeting with the psychic, it was just extraordinary. I mean, the word synchronicity could have been invented for it. It was just people, places, experiences, books, documents, all, I was walking into them all the time. And not only did the information come to me in abundance, it was coming in almost the right order to best understand it and put the puzzle pieces together. Now, that means there is a force at work that's beyond clearly the 5 sense reality of the program that is there for anyone to tap into. I remember, when you look at people like Leonardo da Vinci and Giordano Bruno, who were way ahead of their what they called their time in terms of things that Da Vinci could envisage and Da Vinci built and could understand, and in terms of the spiritual nature of reality, Giordano Bruno, of course, was burnt at the stake for knowing the truth. But the point is, people say about them back in the 1500s, and they say they were ahead of their time. They were not, because there is no time as we perceive it, only clocks. What they were was tapping in to these higher levels of awareness, and thus they could perceive things in this reality that others in this reality could not perceive because they weren't tapping into that level of awareness. They weren't ahead of their time. They were able to go beyond time, which is part of this construct, prison energetic construct, which we are currently experiencing. And you know, you can be knocking rocks together and tap into this greater reality, or you can be at the cutting edge of, you know, human technology and not be tapping into it. And that's where we got, because of this confusion about reality, awareness, and consciousness, about intelligence against knowing, people perceive those that seem to know a lot within the five sense world as geniuses and clever and all these things, when actually all they are is knowledgeable about, in infinite reality terms, I was going to say very little, but that doesn't even do justice to how little they are aware of. But because they know a lot about a tiny amount, they are considered genius, they are considered clever. And because they have letters after their name, whoa, and they went to university and stuff like that, well, my goodness me, they must know everything. They are the fountain of knowledge. And it's breaking this perception. So people can realize then that you can be standing behind the counter at the store on the corner of the street and be aware of more than some fated scientist will ever know until he too awakens to beyond his bubble. It's a completely different way of looking at the world and valuing knowing over downloaded information. And when you think about it, the education system, indeed the information system in general, overwhelmingly, is not about the unknown, it's about the known. You go to school to be told about the known. Now, as we know, with the passage of what appears to be time, what was once known is later shown to be nonsensical, never mind not true. But all you're getting in the education system and through the media is a version of the known at that point. And if you are standing between two railway tracks and the only information you're receiving is symbolically coming between those tracks, then what is known is going to be a laughable fraction of what there is to know within the greater infinity beyond that tiny range of information. And so when people talk about solutions, you know, there's only one solution that really works, and that's removing the cause of the problem. And the cause of the problem is the focus and programmed attention on the five senses at the exclusion to all else. And the solution, the removal of the problem, is to break out of that purely by ceasing to take it seriously and ceasing to let it be your oracle on everything, and open your mind to all possibility. And once that process starts, of course, the bubble is in dead trouble.
Yeah, and it's all about identifying this problem, because we're told the problem is just to rehash the same old information, come up with a new model of it. But now what people are realizing is the problem isn't what I thought it was. And it's all about the question. When you get into any form of serious philosophy, it's not the answer, it's the question. And that's very much an example of that. It's funny when you said about, you know, some guy banging two rocks together can get this. I mean, honestly, the indigenous people of the world who live very simply get this. They live it. We just posted something today about how to relieve trauma, the indigenous tribes in Australia, they go and they perform this retreat in nature where they, go and have it out with universe and the creative source and sort out their issues. What's it called? What's the name of that process? Dakini or something. Dakiri. But, these are native to these cultures, which is why, as we know, they've been stamping out native cultures, right, including up to the Irish or in any culture that has any depth or connectivity, because they've discovered this simple, profound wellspring of truth and empowerment, which now people are getting to the end of themselves and the matrix crashing the way it is, people's lives being disrupted. I mean, I say bring it on if this is what's bringing people's awakening, because if it has to crumble before their eyes to get them to wake up, so be it. But now people are starting to go, wait a minute, I've been looking at this all wrong. And what's beautiful is the amount of information that's now available, whether they want to get into the details of all the dark mechanisms or even the more esoteric notions of awakening and empowerment. It's there. It's available. I mean, it's a remarkable time. It's really remarkable.
Well, it's interesting. When I was being told about what I've dubbed the truth vibrations in 1990, one of the things I was told in terms of their effect was that all that had been hidden would be brought to the surface. Now, once again, as with awakening, in 1990, there was virtually no evidence of that whatsoever. But as I say, look at the information that was formerly denied us that's come to the surface. And this is why, your Googles and Facebooks and YouTubes and all these people are, in the end, all controlled by the same force, are running around desperately trying to shut off this flow of information. And they'll try, and they are trying, and they're getting more and more extreme and ludicrous with it. But you can't deny something that is beyond your capacity.
That's right.
Your Mark Zuckerbergs and your Google executives, I mean, they are not even flies on an elephant's back to this energetic transformation.
That's right.
What you say about native peoples, again, is so easily explainable. When a child comes into this world, what we call a child, incarnate consciousness, then not totally, but to a very large extent, you have a blank sheet of paper. And therefore, the download will dictate reality, especially in the formative years. So this is to tell you a quick story. In 1993, I was in the old city of Jerusalem, and it was a very powerful time for me. I spent about 3 days there, and many things happened. It was a bit of a cathartic experience, really. Anyway, I'm standing near the big mosque in the old city of Jerusalem, which is not very big. I'm talking about Jerusalem in general. The old city of Jerusalem is not very big, and it's behind a big wall. And even though it's not very big, it's broken up into quarters. There's a Jewish quarter, a Muslim quarter, a Christian quarter, and an Armenian quarter. And what I was doing was standing by this mosque, and there was these little Muslim kids playing football. There must have been about 7 or 8 years of age, not much more, some bigger. They were, playing the game. And I stood there and I thought, by that age, 7 or 8, because they were born in the Muslim quarter, they would have a certain view of themselves, of life, of God, of Jewish people, of reality. But if they'd have been born, in this case of the old city of Jerusalem, just down the street in the Jewish quarter, at the same age, they would have a very different view of themselves, life, reality, and Muslim people. And the only difference is the information download that they've been subjected to from the time that they were born. And thus, when you come to native peoples, they overwhelmingly have not been to school at age 3 being told what they must think or should think about everything. And therefore, that closing of the door by the focus on the five senses, by the focus on the program being real, means you close the door to that which is truly real, means that they have an ability to grasp and understand reality, not necessarily all of them either, but they have the potential to grasp reality on a much more expanded way because their door has not been shut by the system. And that's why they are seeking to undermine and pull all native peoples into the system. So you know, we talk for ages about the transhumanist agenda, which is, you know, I've got a chapter in Phantom Self called Transphantomism, which is a word I invented to describe the next stage beyond the phantom. You've got the phantom self, as I call it, which is the focus on your self-identity with your life history, race, religion, background, income bracket, all of that. No, that's your experience. It's not you. But if you self-identify with phantom self, as I call it, then you self-identify with all the senses of limitation that come with phantom self. Thus, you are in the bubble, you're in the program. And that is powerful enough to disconnect most people from infinite awareness. What they want to do now is get bits of technology inside us to technologically and connect our minds to what Ray Kurzweil calls the cloud. In other words, the technologically generated sub-reality I've been writing about for so long. So that cloud, that artificial intelligence, becomes the middleman or the middle sense of reality between the five sense self and the infinite self, so that infinite self is drowned out and shut out to an even greater extent than now. This is why these few years now are so important and so vital. Deciding where this goes, because this transhumanist thing is moving and it needs to be headed off by being exposed to what it is. This all comes together and explains all these different aspects we're talking about, including why there is this systematic attack on the alternative media, which is to stop this information coming out, and why there is this systematic, over so long now, attempt to destroy native peoples, their cultures, and their ways.
And the artificial intelligence, this techno-fascism, the merging of man with machine, that transphantomism is a beautiful term. It's like the ultimate stopgap. For those who are awakening, we're going to put a shutoff valve that even if you start to awaken, we're going to divert you into this iCloud nanny state dead end where you're not going to find your way out. And if you start screwing around, we'll just turn your chip off. I mean, it's the ultimate form of fascism when you get into the whole message of technocracy. But it's funny, I was on my notes, one thing I wanted to talk to you about, ask you about is you often talk about these 3 years that we've just embarked upon as pretty much our ultimate chance to really turn things around. That this is our opportunity. And this, I think this rallying cry and this awareness and coming to terms with the reality of that fact, I think is very important for people to take on board and adjust their lives accordingly, because this is, I agree with you completely. It's this year in particular, 2016, it's whether are we going to show up or not, and as we know, there's the way people show up is different for each person, but respond we must. That's what we're here for. We have the ability to respond, responsibility. And but could you elaborate a little bit on how you've envisioned these 3 years and this particular setting we're in now, and anything you'd like to share with people to help them understand this better and and help kick things into gear?
Well, I picked up 2016, 17, and 18 quite a long time ago, intuitively, and also I was looking at the way things were going and the speed they were going. Once you start to understand the depth of transhumanism and what it's really trying to do, and this is the question. You said earlier, it's about asking the right question. Well, I asked the question, all over now, we're hearing about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is going to run everything. Artificial intelligence is going to do this. Artificial intelligence will do that. Oh, yeah, you're going to be connected through the cloud to artificial intelligence. But there's one question missing. What is this artificial intelligence? What is it? No one seems to ask that.
No.
And I'll tell you what my opinion is. And after looking at this in depth over a long period, and I go into this in detail in Phantom Self, I think that this world is ultimately controlled by a self-aware equivalent of a computer virus. And I emphasize self-aware. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the analogy, and it's not just an analogy, I think it's very, very close to the truth in so many ways, of a computer virus. It doesn't create anything. It piggybacks that which is already created. It infiltrates and it changes. It takes over. And it's my view that there's a very, very good chance that this whole theme of being born with original sin is actually being born with this virus. And I think there's a word for this virus. I think we use it all the time. I think we call it fear. I think that's the virus. In my books, and others have researched similar themes about the force that is behind in the shadows, manipulating those that we see and the world that we see. Feeds off human fear, feeds off low vibrational human emotion. Yes. It's like Morpheus in the Matrix holding the battery up and saying the machines have turned us into one of these, which is a power source. Now, of course, in frequency terms, you can only absorb frequencies of energy which are in the frequency band that you are operating on. When you tune to radio 1, you don't get radio 2. And for me, there's a simple reason why this force feeds off fear, because it is itself fear. And, my view is that there's so many apparent contradictions that people, I understand, find hard to pull together. Like, how can a loving God allow the law of the wild, where everything survives by feeding off the death of everything else? Before this fear arrived in this reality, I don't think there was a law of the wild at all. I think it literally was. All life got on together and was able to, through energetically and through frequency communication, was able to communicate. We could talk to the animals. We still can on an energetic level. And when this hijack of this reality happened, before it happened, we were in a much higher, more powerful energetic environment. And we were less dense in terms of our frequency. And thus we were able to feed and get energetic nourishment from the energy field itself. Mm-hmm. Once this hijack took over and a whole new energetic environment was created, there was suddenly an energetic deficit between what could be accessed from the energetic field and what was energetic required for survival. And this went right across the various expressions of form in this reality. And thus that bridge was bridged, or that gap was bridged, by eating what we call solid food. When you eat meat or whether you eat plants, whatever it is, what are you consuming? You are consuming energy in a, well, I would say holographic form, what appears to be a physical form. Without that energetic deficit, because of the nature of the energetic environment changing,
right,
there would be no need to do that. And without the fear of surviving so someone else can live, which is what this law of the wild is all about, because it operates in the human world as well, then you take away that fear. You take away fear right across the animal kingdom. I mean, when I watch these wildlife documentaries, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, it's a software program. It's so obvious. All the cycles and all the behaviors. Yeah. Why does an elephant act like an elephant and a duck act like a duck? Why doesn't a duck act like an elephant? Because that's the duck software and that's the elephant software. It's the program. So when we reinvigorate this energetic environment, as this truth vibrations transformation goes on and on and on, we will return to that level of energetic power, the energetic sea that we all live in, will return to the power that was before. So when you hear these ancient stories of the golden age, when, you know, animals and you know, the lion sat down with the lamb symbolically and all that, the days which are described when there was clearly the world that's described is one where there's no fear. Suddenly, this fear, I would say, is this self-aware, if you like, virus. Once that fear was introduced, everything changed. And we live in a world that is driven by fear. Now, when you look at the extremes of this virus, we have a name for it. We call it psychopathic behavior. Psychopaths have no empathy, no compassion, no ability to put themselves in the feelings of the people that they target and make suffer. Thus, there is no fail-safe mechanism to stop any scale of extreme behavior. This virus, when it overwhelms someone, virtually totally, they become psychopaths. Now, when you then look at the stories of how certain bloodlines were genetically engineered to, if you like, run the world for the virus, as I would say, and these are the ones today that run the political system, the banking system, the giant corporations, the media corporations, etc. For me, what they have been, these bloodlines have been created to do is be carriers and vehicles for this virus. So then you look at their behavior. You look at how they systematically create suffering in the world and get off on it. That is a classic expression, behavior expression of this virus.
And they reproduce themselves. They recreate the same traumatic entry points to keep the virus alive. And
this is the point. We talk about computer viruses being able to self-replicate. They can. You see, where the Gnostics talked about the demiurge, what became known in some religions as the devil, and the archons which the demiurge created to serve the demiurge. I think if you break that down, and take all the form and all the symbolism away, I would say this demiurge is the prime virus, and what we call archons are replications of the virus. A bit like, when Agent Smith in The Matrix suddenly became hundreds
multiplies.
of Smiths. I would suggest actually what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And so when the Native Americans talk about having two wolves inside us,
Right.
one is joy and love and compassion and empathy, and the other one is hatred and violence and hostility. For me, I would say this: those two wolves break down as infinite awareness expressing itself and the virus expressing itself. And the question is, are we going to be driven by the virus, or are we going to be driven by infinite awareness? What happens when you awaken is infinite awareness gets more and more of its hands on the wheel, and thus we start to change, not just in what we're aware of, but we change in the way we see the world, with the way we see each other. And this for me is what is happening. Now, just quickly to finish this point, and I could talk for hours about this, but this is what I talk about in the Phantom Self at length. For me, transhumanism, creating the so-called smart grid where everything, including domestic appliances, are connected to the internet, and all this smart dust nanobot technology where everything becomes, basically, you used the word earlier, synthetic. That's very, very important, because what this virus is doing is transforming the world at all levels, including behavior, including knowledge, from the natural world as people perceive it to a synthetic world. And the definition of synthetic is something that imitates the natural. That's what they're doing. And the only way to stop this is to awaken to expanded awareness, so that you do not get pulled into the synthetic, because you are in frequency terms beyond the synthetic. But what they're doing is creating a structure, a technological structure of nanotechnology and smart technology and all. I mean, is there anything that hasn't got the name smart, the word smart in front of it these days? And all these smart technologies speak to each other. They're part of a grid. This is what's being built. And they're saying that that we are going to be controlled. This whole grid is going to be controlled by artificial intelligence.
What's interesting about that is they're creating this mystique that artificial intelligence is this potential all-powerful, all-knowing, it's the new God replacement program.
That's exactly what it is.
But they want people to have this awe and wonder, just like the mistake people make at looking at the elites and the power structure, as if they're this super all-powerful, all-knowing, can do anything group of people, or this AI thing, and it's baloney. It's not even mathematically possible or scientifically possible. They're just throwing this crap up as just another idea to get people to funnel their energy, just like you're saying, their attention and their obeisance. People give themselves over to these concepts, and they like this one because it's sexy, this new transhuman thing. Boy, oh boy, but what a bunch of hooey.
Well, for me, what they're doing is creating a vehicle, a technological vehicle for this self-aware virus to impose itself. Now, if you look at that movie with Johnny Depp, Transcendence, for anyone who hasn't seen it, he was a scientist. He found he was dying. His wife, who was a scientist, downloaded his consciousness onto the internet. The internet became self-aware. I think if it's not self-aware already, it's in the process of becoming self-aware. Because people need to, if they're going to understand what's going on, they need to just put form aside. Put form aside. We're talking about awareness in different forms: skewed awareness, inverted awareness, distorted awareness, and infinite awareness. They're all expressions of awareness. And for me, what's happening is this vehicle, this technological vehicle, is being created called the smart grid and the cloud, as Kurzweil talks about. And what happened in Transcendence is that because everything by the time this film was set was connected to the internet, like I say, domestic appliances, and humans via things like what they're calling today smart dust, nanotechnology inside the body, that this consciousness that was the depth consciousness that became the self-aware internet was able to dictate the behavior of people and dictate the behavior of any technology connected to the internet. It was running the show. And this is what artificial intelligence is for me. It's a vehicle for this skewed, distorted, self-aware virus, quote, to take over things. And you know, the Matrix the movies were so accurate on so many levels. And what did they depict? It was a world controlled by machines feeding off human energy. And this is what we're looking at in so many ways. Hollywood is constantly telling us what's coming, not necessarily for benevolent reasons either, because it's part of this. If something that's coming is so vastly different to what is, then that difference elicits immediately a resistance to the dramatically changed reality. And what they're doing through these movies, Hollywood movies, is they are preparing the subconscious to become familiar with it, so it is less dramatically different to what it would be without this so-called preemptive program.
Greasing the path.
So when you look at, therefore, Hollywood movies, they're telling you what's coming. And, of course, the dystopian societies that are depicted in movies these days, I mean, it's just one after the other. It must have a conveyor belt in LA somewhere turning these things out. It's because they're telling us what's coming. And in that way, and in that sense, when you realize that, it becomes a very good way of getting a visual sense given to you on a big screen of what the plan is. And, you know, that depth film was so symbolically accurate, I would say, and more than symbolically in many ways, to what this whole transhumanist artificial intelligence agenda really is.
Yeah. Besides gloating amongst themselves, their intention is simply to get the acceptance of what they're planning more prepared. They just want people to accept it easier and quicker. And so if they're familiar with the concept and then they see it in the news and, you know, it gets rolled out in their university science lab, it's no surprise. They've already been conditioned. It's all conditioning. That's the only reason for it. We interpret it. There's two ways to see it. We can see it as foreshadowing and help to read what's going on. Other people who swallow it unconsciously are only letting themselves be prepared for these changes. And as we know, they can't move too fast, as you said, or people rebel. So they do, like you call the totalitarian tiptoe. They have to be really careful, which is why it takes so long. And this whole process, the AI thing, I mean, it's accelerating at such a rate now. It's almost amazing. I think it's because people are so fascinated with it and they're getting so little resistance. But this whole idea of artificial intelligence and technology, I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with that word entropy. What this other force, this virus you're talking about, seeks to do, one of the manifestations is to break down complexity into its most basic energetic elements. That's what they're doing with the geoengineering and destroying the atmosphere. They're doing it to water. They're doing it through genetic modification. And now this technological is the ultimate affront to anything natural. They're breaking it down, and now to invade the human body, to break us down. That entropic process, I encourage anyone to look that word up and look up the concept, but it's very much what they're doing. And this is how they create energy, by breaking down complexity. And this is what they're feeding off of. The way you describe it, I think, is brilliant. This fear virus that feeds off itself, generates it, creates it in order to feed for more. I think that's a very apt explanation.
Well, the thing about decay is interesting because decay and death, they all have a frequency. They all have an energetic expression. And they are also within the frequency absorption range of this self-aware virus. And thus, if you look at Satanism and such like, they are obsessed with death. It's all about death because it's an energy, and it's an energy that they can feed off. And so is decay. You know, when people say, and it's another, understandable question, why would these people destroy the earth that they have to live on? Well, how about these people do not need the earth and the earth energetic environment, the earth atmosphere that humans do. Therefore, they're not actually destroying the earth they have to live on. They are changing the nature of our reality so it suits them. That's what's happening.
Exactly.
And this is massively part of what geoengineering is about, and certainly it is part of the incredible increase in atmospheric radiation in the last 50 years caused by technological means and nuclear, well, in terms of Fukushima, non-accident, I would strongly suggest. And so what I would say is happening is they are preparing the new human that would be able to survive through mutation in this new environment to continue to be the slaves, but they don't need anything like as many, not least because the more the machines come in, the less labor they need the slaves for.
Exactly.
And this is where you get your your global population cull theme from. And this again comes back to why 2016, 17, 18 and immediately beyond are so important, because it's no accident. Well, first of all, they're important because this is moving on, and it'll get to a certain point where it'll be much more difficult to turn it back, to say the least. But, one of the great themes about this force, which is given different names in different cultures, is that it's terrified of humans becoming what humans can be.
That's right.
Because what we're looking at is not an all-powerful force controlling a subservient, less than powerful human race. We're looking at the equivalent of, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. The virus is the one-eyed man. What they've done, and the virus in all its expressions in form has done, is to make humans blind compared with its one eye.
That's right.
Ironically, one eye, given that's one of the major symbols of this network. And thus, when we become conscious beyond the program they have instigated, then we become the two-eyed, three-eyed, third-eyed man and woman, far more powerful than that which is currently controlling us. As I've been saying over the years, the focus is not on holding us in a fraction of our awareness because it's good for a laugh and a bit of fun. It's absolutely essential and foundation to everything that's happening. An awakened humanity cannot be controlled in this way. It cannot be, because it can see through it immediately, and it has the power and thus the self-power to respond to the challenge in the way that each person is best equipped to respond, and we bring an end to it. So the next 3 years, 4 years are going to be vital, because the question is, how many are going to awaken and see it? And every time someone awakens and starts to come from an expanded state of awareness, And of course, it's not a 0 to 90 and that's it. It's a constant continuing expansion once the process has started. You start to broadcast a different frequency.
Exactly.
Frequency then starts to break down the density of the virus frequency, the fear frequency, and everything starts to move. And
That's right.
Everything starts to become more malleable, more etheric instead of concrete-like. And thus everything starts to change and the virus kind of loses its control. So this is where we are. I mean, it's not about, believing in a God or believing in a religion. That's not what I'm talking about. And people like us don't talk about in terms of spirituality. It's expanded awareness into the infinite, all that is, has been, and ever can be, all possibility, all potential, which is there for anyone to do. And it's not a case of having to seek an expanded awareness. It's not. We are already expanded awareness.
That's right.
What we need to do is dismantle the walls, and in computer terms, very appropriate, the firewalls of belief and programmed perception that are holding us from accessing what we truly always are, have been, and ever can be. That's the revolution. And there's not a gun in sight. There's not a bullet in sight, because they're not necessary. You start fighting violence with violence, you are consumed by the virus while thinking you're fighting the foe.
That's right.
And so, when people say, what are the solutions? We are the solution by becoming what we are and ceasing to be what we've been programmed to think we are.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And that's exactly, I'm on the same page, brother. It's when one person awakens, it's almost immeasurable, the impact that each person, that's why my book's called You Are the Awakening. It's an individual thing. When one person awakens, not only do they stop contributing and feeding off of and feeding the fear of this virus program, but they start contributing on the other side. And as you said, they break up the cement density. I talk about it in terms of the morphic field. All of a sudden, there's this positive, instead of negative contributionism to everything wrong, it's all of a sudden, by its very nature, without doing anything, just by being awake and aware and open, it animates this amazing force field that has no limits and will continue to affect and wake up others. When you were describing the nature of this, of how humanity's been contained by this virus, I had a picture almost from like one of those fairy tales, how there's the necromancer, who has all these people under its power and has hypnotized them into this mass hypnosis and has them under their power. And obviously this is a sort of, call it an evil controlling influence. And that's exactly what it is. It's almost fairy tale-like. And as in the fairy tales, this spell eventually gets broken, but it requires a certain degree of heroism, of courage, of willingness to wake up, a willingness to wake up others and call out that that's a necromancer. That's not who he says he is, like all of these world leaders are. And another picture that came to me is as you were describing these psychopathic so-called leaders that get these bloodlines that pass down, and the way they're destroying our environment deliberately because, they're morphing things into something else. And ultimately what's driving them does not need this biological feedback mechanism that we were born into. But it's almost like you could picture these people as Terminator-like robots, stainless steel things inside of human flesh, and they don't care if their flesh gets consumed because ultimately they're robotons on the inside. It's a sort of, they don't care. It takes you to the Terminator series. But it's very much like that. We're dealing with something that is otherworldly, which is why so many people have such a hard time conceptualizing there can be such a such an agenda as we're talking about, but they'll slowly get it. And as you know, it's ironic that their own religions teach them these very paradigms, these methods of sort of interpreting what's going on, yet they can't translate it into this world. But I just love the way you put that, and what a wonderful message regarding what the awakening is, and how powerful and inspiring it is, and what a privilege it is for each of us to help pass it on, and how everybody really should do everything they can. But because that's all there is to do right now, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, if you look at what the Gnostics said about the archons, they talked about them in terms of almost a cyborg phenomenon, as we.
Yeah.
That is what we're looking at.
It is. Right.
When you talk about evil, evil in the way it's written is live written backwards, and that's the inversion. What this virus is, it's an inversion of life. If you look at the world, all its expressions, it's inverted. Everything's upside down.
That's right.
This virus is inverting everything. And because it's an inversion of life, it is obsessed with death. That's why everything it touches is about fear and death. But we have the power to overwhelm that and to be influenced by it. Because it has a frequency, and that frequency I would suggest is fear and all its expressions, to control us, it has to pull us into its frequency. If we're not in its frequency, we're back again. Radio 1 can't communicate with Radio 2 because it's not on the same frequency. And this is really what it's all about. It's withdrawing your frequency connection to it. And in doing so, withdrawing its ability to influence you. The more people do it, to influence the world.
Yeah, I like that word you use, frequency absorption range. That's very, very telling, because people think they're just tuning into something, but it's an absorption ability. It's like they use these signals with their fundamental tenets of, the usual fear porn and all that, but use them like a carrier signal. And they piggyback onto that like they do on the TV signal and all this other smart crap. They piggyback onto whatever other informational stuff they want to not only send into the home, but extract out of the home. It kind of illustrates your absorption concept there. But I think it's this energetic understanding, the way you explain it, is very empowering. I think it's easy for people to understand. They can relate to the world here, but it also puts people in a sense of standby and alertness. What exactly are they tuning into? I'm amazed how many alternative people still watch television. They don't realize what a weapon it is. It's things like that they're always startling, and I don't mean to sound self-righteous about it, but people got to realize just how toxic this stuff is. It's some of it, we have to deal with it. It's around us, but we can do what we can. But that energy absorption, frequency absorption, I think that's a very powerful term.
Yeah, well, I think that the alternative media is seen as sort of one thing. It's the alternative media. Yeah. In fact, it's a vast spectrum of people who are coming from a different angle to the mainstream media, but there is a point in the alternative media which is almost imperceptibly different from the mainstream. It's just almost exactly the same, with just a little touch different. Right across to the other end, where people like me and others are questioning everything.
Yeah.
Everything to see if it stands up. And between those 2 points is what we call the alternative media. And for me, if people don't grasp the energetic nature of what's going on and the nature of reality itself, which explains how that energetic nature of reality is able to be, then it, I've spent decades uncovering things like 9/11 and banking crashes and engineered crashes and engineered wars, and I still do, because people need to know that. But if you don't have this other vast dimension of what's happening at a deep, deep, deep level in the rabbit hole, then all you can see as a solution is fighting that which you are seeking to expose. And in fighting it, you become it. And, what you fight, you become. And so the alternative media, too, I would suggest, has also to awaken beyond where much of it currently is, so that it can actually perceive solutions to the situation that are beyond stockpiling weapons and fighting the good fight. What do you do? Fight for peace? What do you do? Fight for good? Or what? So how do you do that? Well, you fight. So you're in active fighting. Where's that going to take us? And because a large chunk of the alternative media, particularly in America, came out of the Christian arena, a lot of it is welded to that belief system. In the Muslim world, you'll get people who will become aware of world events and the manipulation of world events. I mean, why wouldn't they, given what's being done to them in the Middle East? But if you come out, if you become aware of the manipulation of world events while holding your reference point for everything within your religion, well, that's just the same thing as someone doing it with Christianity, someone doing it with Hinduism. It's the program. Infinite awareness, all that is, has been, and ever can be, does not need to worship anything.
It's actually more dangerous. It becomes a newly disguised pill that only takes you so far and not to the end result, the end solution. It's these things that fall short are very dangerous because they have so much truth in them, and yet they don't take you to the answer. Like that famous quote, we can't solve today's problems in the same level of consciousness that created them. Until humanity first wakes up, the rest of it's futility. We'll paint the building a new color and patch a few walls, and we'll just get the same old crap eon upon eon upon eon, whereas we're being handed an opportunity humanity has rarely been handed at this level of awakening, this level of conscious empowerment, these truth vibrations that you've talked about, that so many of us feel, know, are experiencing, and are enthralled and empowered by. This is an amazing time. So there's going to be a lot of this stuff that seems to get pretty far and then stop short. They're going to be shunting people off on all these trip-offs, and that's where just what you're saying, without this conscious awareness element, the rest of it is just running circles with a new coat of paint, a new way of describing the same old crap. We've had enough of that. It's time we grew up, matured, and went to where the real answers are and the real solutions.
Yeah, it's like I call it the slip road technique. You are flying along a freeway, and what the system's trying to do, if you're going in the right direction, is to entice you off onto the slip road and into a cul-de-sac where you think that you've got it. And if anyone thinks they've got it, then they're confirming they haven't got it, because the awakening process is a process.
Right. That's right.
And thus, if you ever stop expanding your sense of the possible, then you just gone a bit further, but you've stopped like everybody else. And the system has got these techniques all over the place to put you into these cul-de-sacs. And I have this phrase that I use: my dot is the only dot. That is one of the great control mechanisms, even among those in the alternative media. My dot is the only dot. So people in the alternative media abuse each other if you go into this area and that area, because my dot is the only dot. There was a person in Britain years ago, he might still do, I don't know, but he certainly did then. He thought the Bilderberg group was it. And when you started to explain that it was just a strand in it or a dot in it, then he would go off on one. But my dot is the only dot. You know, I've researched the Bilderberg group. My dot is the only dot, and the system is constantly trying to get you to do that. I'm a Christian. I'm a Muslim. I'm a Hindu. My dot is the only dot. And it holds you apart from seeing the picture by connecting the dots and connecting the puzzle pieces. So what's being asked, what these truth vibrations are asking people to do, is to put down all preconceived idea, which is what belief is, all preconceived belief, all my dot is the only dot mentality, and to come to a blank sheet of paper and say what goes on that paper will have to justify itself now. And I'm not going to accept my religion any longer just because my mother and father brought me up in that religion from when I was born. I'm going to see if that religion stands up. And you know, again, we go back to Jerusalem and those little boys. How many people brought up in Muslim homes become Christian? How many people brought up in Christian homes become Muslim? You know, it's the program. You know, you take people now who are vehement Muslims and you take them back and wind back the video and you bring them up in the southern states of America, and they will be vehement Christians by now. It's just the program. And it's going beyond the program, seeing the program, realizing that it's a download and not reality. That is the revolution that will bring.
That's right. You know, what's interesting is within the, I guess, alternative research or spiritual community, people are building new religions all the time.
Right, they are.
Like they have their shibboleth, like you're saying. It's the Fed. It was 9/11. If it doesn't include that, then you don't really have the big picture. You know, it's this. But that's very egoic. A easy symptom to identify is this egoic, prideful attachment. And you've probably seen, I've written about this quite a bit. When people get into this dogma of the latest revelation about, you know, what's going on, and it turns into a conflict and people are defending their territory, it's manifesting the same religious attachment, which is fundamentally egoic. It's one explanation, but it's self. It's not consciousness. It's activating right in line with the program of all this crappy little muscle that was taught and exercised to make us think it's our real self when it's not. It's a complete, supplanting of our true spiritual nature. But it's so easy to create new religions all the time. These little belief systems. I mean, that beliefs, my goodness, look at the intellectuals. They say they're not religious, but they are absolutely dogmatically attached to whatever their scientific or historical perspective.
If you look at people like Richard Dawkins, Professor Richard Dawkins, who is very anti-religion, he is the high priest of scientism. He is running a scientific cult while having no idea that that's what he's doing, or he's promoting a scientific cult while having no idea what he's doing. And he would have total contempt for the New Age, and the New Age would look at him and say, you know, fast asleep. But he is my dot is the only dot. The New Age is my dot is the only dot.
Exactly. Some
of the people that have abused me and had a go at me more than any others have been New Age stars in America. Because I'm talking about things and they say, well, it's negative and all that stuff. Well, since when has truth and understanding of what's happening been negative? And why are you telling people to step out of fear, and then you're saying that the truth will frighten people. I mean, what are you talking about? It's just ridiculous.
So inconsistent. Look at the Church of Climatology. There's another religion.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, it's like you're exactly right about scientism. There's some very fascinating research or articles that I read how scientism really is the religion of the world today. You know, the men in white coats and people just give up their personality. They walk into a hospital or a doctor's office and just lay their lives down and don't even realize they actually have a personality change. But this obeisance to science and technology it's a religion. That's exactly what you described. But it goes for all these things, whether it's this international trade thing or this new world order idea, globalism. These are all religious concepts. They're belief systems that are nothing more than mechanisms of control that give sort of a flourish, sort of a social tingling to people that they're part of something. It's people are, because they've been steeped in this kind of thinking for so long, they're so easily misled until, again, they wake up to the whole idea of unconditional conscious awareness, that there's nothing to fear, and then things start to take on a very real perspective. And but they're trying to snare everything possible to keep people from finding that out.
Yeah, well, the receptors in the cells that receive cocaine or heroin are the same receptors that receive the chemicals generated by emotion. That's why people can get addicted to worry. That's why people get addicted to the what they call addicted to love. In other words, to the first rush of attraction. They get addicted to that chemical which is created. So just as, you know, the same receptors in the cells are receiving multiple different sources of input, so the basic mental state that becomes overwhelmed by religion and religious fervor, that mental state can be used to receive endless other belief systems and process them in the same way as a religion that are not actually called religions. You know, people talk about someone doing something with religious fervor and all that, and they actually probably are. And it's the religion program. It's
That's
not
right.
the Christian program, the Muslim program, the Hindu program. They are sub-programs of the software. It is the religion program, and Professor Richard Dawkins has got it to a very extreme extent, because just as some guy off a conveyor belt, because they all seem to deliver it the same, stands, you know, bashing the pulpit and banging out the Bible or banging out the Quran, then Richard Dawkins will stand there banging out the fact that his religion is the only religion. In other words, if it's not the scientific song sheet, it must be Looney Tunes. And it's extraordinary. It's childlike, really. But that's the way the program works. And of course, programs only program you. I mean, if I said to this computer, if it could speak in front of me, you're just downloading a program, you're just processing a program, it would probably say, you're bloody mad. I'm deciding this. Okay, listen to me click. Okay, you've gone there. I've just clicked there. Yeah, I agreed that I wanted to go there. That's why I'm there. I'm doing it. Right? That's what he would do. Yeah. That's what people are doing all the time. And it's that moment. It's that moment, that Damascus moment, when you realize that's what you're doing. That's when you can break out of it.
That's right. So true. You know, I was thinking as you were talking that another form of belief system is the whole idea of hierarchy itself, that there needs to be that people looking to others. Like you could, all of these things that get in the way of real full awareness are in fact forms of belief systems. And when they cluster them together, you know, they can form bigger belief systems where people feel like they're more involved with more people and it's got more approval. But ultimately, what you're saying, I think that was brilliant because it's like psychic endorphins that people are feeding off of. Like you said, a love relationship, the first buzz, or whatever it is that's activating these lower level densities that feel good, but ultimately lead into these other cycles if we're not careful. I mean, we're supposed to enjoy our existence here. That's fine, but it's not the be all end all. This is just, like you said, it's the 5D projection.
Well, I talked to a guy who'd been in government mind control in the United States a long time ago now. And he said to me that he could make anyone fall in love with anyone just by stimulating certain chemicals in the brain. He said they don't need to have any physical attraction. They don't need to have any attraction whatsoever on any other. And he was explaining how they did this with people in mind control programs, how they to get them to fall in love and become partners simply by stimulating certain chemicals. And it's what I call, that's what I call mind love, as opposed to infinite love, which is, for me, friendship is very much closer to infinite love than physical attraction, what I call mind love, because you get a situation where people are physically attracted, and of course they can be physically attracted, and then once the physical attraction starts to dim, what is left? Often nothing, and they part. And you've got people running around addicted to love who are going from partner to partner simply because they are desperate for their fix of that chemical that comes from the first rush of attraction. And often a partner that comes from attraction, physical attraction, will not be there when you need them. But a friend, as the saying goes, a friend is the one that walks in the room when everyone else has just walked out. And so much what we call friendship as opposed to attractionship is unconditional. I don't agree with what you've done, mate, but I'll be here for you. I don't agree with what you've done, darling. I'm leaving. And that's a completely different thing. I think friendship is a wonderful state of relationship where things are not expected either way, but when you're in need of help, the friend is there, or the friends are there. That for me is much closer to the infinite love connection than not all relationships. Some relationships are friendship and physical attraction. They're fantastic. But I'm saying that friendship for me is the key. I mean, if you're in a relationship with someone, if the friendship element is not there, it ain't going to last that long. It ain't. Friendship is what holds it together because, things happen between people that don't, one or the other or both don't like, but the friendship holds the ship from tipping over. Without that, it's gone. And friendship for me is great. I mean, I've lived alone now since 2006-07, and it's been the most wonderful time because I can interact with people outside of my space on their terms and my terms in terms of when and how and what. I'm not talking about man-woman relationships. I'm not interested in them, to be honest. I'm talking about friends relationships. Right. But within my space, I can now live my life as I want to live it. I can focus on my work without having to think, well, what effect am I having on someone else? Should I stop now? Because I'm doing what I'm doing because I feel it needs to be done on a best scale possible. And so this having your own space and then interacting from that perspective for me has been, fantastic, as opposed to constantly having to watch what you're doing because of its effect on someone else. And I, I don't want to do that. So, the someone else can go into their space. I can go in my space and meet when it suits both, rather than this relationship where you're constantly watching what you're saying. You're constantly watching what you're doing, how long you're taking to do it, whether you're here, whether you're there. I've found it a real freedom, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine there's very enlightened relationships, male, female, let's say, that where they have a friendship and they live together, but they operate as in that same independent space.
Oh, that would be great.
I know there are people that are able to do that, but it's sort of like that thing I mentioned earlier, codependency, the reflex from all we've learned and grown up with. And plus, when you're with someone else, you're concerned about them, and you want to do the considerate thing and all that kind of stuff. And there's obviously we all interact with people, so there's a time for everything. But I think that kind of
what's that? That kind of thinking of other people and being considerate of other people, that interaction can take place outside your own space.
Exactly.
I couldn't have done the work that I've done and what I've done in the last years since 2007, whatever it is, on the scale I have, if I'd have been in a relationship. I get up in the morning and I have my own space. I can focus and I'm answerable to no one. And that's been essential to me. I think other people are different. They would enjoy something different, but that suits me perfectly now.
Yeah. But I think this is part of the path that a lot of us are moving towards is this more aware, more enlightened understanding of interrelationships, such as you're describing, where we lose our sensitivity to things that we were more sensitive to when we were younger, but especially now with the calling that many of us have to do what we need to do, full blast without distraction. I mean, I'm like you. Anything that gets in the way, sorry, but that's not right. Either that has to go, or I'm moving. But I think it's a direction that we're moving. All of us, we're becoming more aware and less subject to previous programming. And I think this is one of the manifestations that a lot of people might be running into. I actually talked about this in my talk at Anarchapulco, because I'm hearing it from a lot of people. There's sort of there's a redefinition of relationships going on, and I've just been through a big one, and it's amazing, but it wasn't. I didn't see it coming, but boy, am I glad. But I'm seeing these kinds of things happening in people's lives, and these are very important times of transition, or types of transition, just as much as all the information gathering, because we need to be wholly awake, fully capable for this next phase before us, for each of us to be able to fulfill, our role in this next 3-year period you're talking about.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, for me, when you start to realize what's happening and all that's going on and where it's meant to go, there is no other thing in life that is more important than addressing that. Because people can say, but my children are more important. Yes, they are. So what kind of world are they going to live in if this goes on? And, so it actually comes, whatever your dot may be in terms of your focus, it's affected by what is happening and the plans for where it's supposed to go. But the other thing is that in terms of relationships, I mean, years ago, before I had my awakening, if you like, before I started to remember, that's what we're doing, the thought of living alone for me would have been, I really wouldn't like that. I don't want to do that. And the more that my own awakening has gone on, now I love it. And I love it. Now, I think, Zen, it's something to do, I mean, it's something we were chatting about earlier. It's something to do with, as the more you connect with the greater self, the more your sense of aloneness starts to dilute, the more your sense of what you called abandonment starts to dilute, and the less you need a physical figure around you to give you comfort that you're not alone. Because instead of, again, looking into the world through the five senses, looking for something to stop you being alone, you are connected this way,
Yes.
out into the great forever, and thus you don't feel alone anymore. Why? Because you're not.
Exactly.
And so I think that's part of the dynamic that's going on.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just so at peace with my life as I'm living it. I mean, you see behind me that this little office doesn't go back very far. There's one bedroom. There's a kitchen that if you swung a cat at it, it would bang its head. And there's a front room and a small bathroom. And I've lived here for, oh God, what would it be? Well, it must be 15, 16 years now.
Wow.
And people, you know, while on the internet, he lives in a big mansion and all that stuff with electric gates. And, you know, the reason I live here is not from some spiritual sense of, you know, purity. It's because it's all I want.
Yeah.
It's all I want. Because the idea of living in a big house, okay, what is that? Oh, that David Icke, he's doing well. He lives in a big house. That is an externalizing my sense of self and my sense of security. So people will say how well I'm doing. I don't need that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I don't care if he lives in a little flat. Well, yeah, but I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I don't live anywhere else. Because once you start to get in the big house, why are you in a big house? Well, now you've got much more to keep up.
Yeah.
You've got a big garden to look after. You've got this, that needs doing. Sorry, I can't work today. This is happening. I've got a man coming.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I get up in the morning and I work. Not because I have any sense of self-purity or I'm working, I've got the work ethic, because I love it and it's what I want to do. And it's, you know, it's kind of funny, you know, not far from here is a village. And in that village, a lot of wealthy people. And there's a friend of mine went to see this big wealthy family. And they live in this big mansion, right? Because he's, you know, worth a fortune. I think he's in the oil industry or something, I don't know. But they all live their daily lives in one frickin' room, right? One room. And it's almost psychologically like the mansion is externalizing their success. You know, tell me I'm successful. I've got a big house. Tell me I'm successful. And the living in the one room in that vast mansion is actually manifesting how they'd really like to live their lives. But somehow they think they have to externalize success because then their success will be externally confirmed. And there's a lot of that goes on. And, you know, in psychological terms, I see this all the time. People who are insecure, and the system wants everyone to be insecure, they, when they're looking for success, they're looking for success that will be externally acknowledged because of their insecurity. This is why you find so many insecure people in Hollywood and these places. They're externalizing their success on films and everything, not all of them, but a lot of them, so that they'll get adulation back and confirmation of their sense of security. So they are looking at wanting that external adulation, that acknowledgement. So how do you get acknowledgement for being successful unless you succeed in the ways the system has told people is success? You can't. If you feel that success is going walking in India or sitting cross-legged on a mountain, then you're not going to get people saying, oh, he's successful, she's successful, look, he's sitting cross-legged on that mountain, oh, what a winner. You're not going to get it. you're going to get it with the big house and the big bank balance and the big car and all that stuff. And so what has happened is the system has so much of the manipulation of human behavior and human desire has been created by what I call selling us our dreams to keep us asleep. So the dream is more money. The dream is always more. Not better, it's more money, more square feet in your house, bigger car and all that. And so people pursue this because they're externalizing their success. And then, of course, they get to a certain point in their life and they realize they feel just as empty then as they did when they started pursuing it in the first place. And they thought the big house and the big car and the mansion in the Bahamas would take away this emptiness inside, but it doesn't. One of the reasons or the key reason that this process goes on lifetime after lifetime is because the system has hijacked our perceptions of success and thus got us to pursue those symbols of success so we will be externally acknowledged as being successful. And once you lose it, you don't need external confirmation of your own success and your own security, then you can start making your own decisions. Do I really want to live in this big bloody mansion? I only live in one room. Let's get a smaller place. I'll tell you what, we still have a room. We won't have all this upkeep. We won't have builders in all the time. But people won't say, oh, look how successful he is. He lives in a little house. Once you lose the need for that, the system loses so much control on your desires and your life and your pursuits and what gives you a sense of security and happiness.
That's right. They create the desires in the first place. It's insane. But it's like you said, it's an externalization. What people are looking for is self-affirmation when they really need to let themselves go and realize that within them is something much more magnificent. The old layers can peel away. They're not losing the damn thing. But as you know, it's all programmed to reinforce that phony self-image and this egoic, energetic system. And it's just so, the beauty of it is when somebody does start to get it, the beauty of the simplicity of what it is to start waking up consciously exposes, despite the vast complexity of this big lie, it just melts away. The solution is so utterly simple, and that's what's so empowering. That's what's so magnificent. That makes you want to do everything you can to help point where this awakening is. You can't have it for anybody else. You can't persuade them to wake up. You can try to improve the conditions to their awakening. You can try to inspire. You can try to, whatever we can do to accelerate or facilitate this awakening. But the cool thing is, once someone finds it, bingo. Some people worry, I just woke up a year ago. It doesn't matter when you wake up. When you wake up, you're here. You're now. You've always been here. It's so funny, and but people get that pretty quick.
Well,
interesting thing though.
Complexity is only there to hide the simplicity of everything. I mean, you can paint a complicated design on a wall, but it's been put there by the same brush. I mean, and if you look beyond the complexity, you see the simple themes that are behind everything that seems to be so complex and impossible to understand in this world. It's not. And when I'm going on this world tour, the point of it is it's over. Each is a day event from 10 in the morning to 10 at night. There are breaks, by the way. What I do is I connect these dots across the vast range of subjects, and in the end, the simple themes that are behind apparent complexity are so compelling when you see them. You know, it's like, it is so simple behind what seems to be a mass of of stuff that you just can't understand. That's the smoke screen. Behind that, it's real simple what's going on.
Yeah. Boy, David, time flies. I can't believe it. There's almost 2 hours there. I could talk to you forever, and I probably will continue to forever since we're locked in forever. But is there anything you want to close with, or because this will be going out, what's going out live now on radio, but it'll be up on YouTube in a day or two. But anything you want to close with live on sort of a maybe wrap up, or anything you want to say? You could talk about your books, and again, your tour coming up, which I really encourage people to do not ever miss. David Icke in a live event. Yes, he actually goes for 12 hours. There are breaks, but you cannot believe your eyes, and it is a life-changing experience. But so I encourage people to do show up and make your way to one of these events, if not more of them. But is there anything you'd like to close with? And boy, I want to thank you again.
Just say that, you know, the reason that I'm going out on this world tour, and it's open-ended, as long as the interest is there, I'm just going to keep going. I mean, it's going to go through 2016 and into 2017 and on. That's what we talked about earlier, 2016, 2017, 2018. You know, people who have been given the gift of understanding some of this stuff, they have a responsibility too to share it with as many people as possible. So that's what I'll be doing. And you know, like we talked about right at the start, I'm going to be so interested to see what the energy is like at these events.
Yes,
it is winding up. It is winding up, and it's just a fantastic experience to be in that energy field of thousands of people who are open. I remember I was talking to a place called Sheffield back in the early days when not that many people came. And I looked behind around the curtain just before I went out, and there was quite a few people there that night, full enough. But they were across a fantastic age range. There were people in their 80s, and there were kids at 15. There was black and white and all that stuff. And somebody behind the curtain said to me, who was from the place, not into the information, what connects all these people? I said, an open mind. That's it. There's no such thing as an age to an open mind. There's no time of an open mind. It's just a mind that's open. And when you open it, something else gets in, and what gets in changes your life.
You should make one of your great quote posters with that quote. There's no age for an open mind. Or I forget how you said it. Beautiful, beautiful, man. David, I can't thank you enough. It's been a real honor, and I love you very much, and I really appreciate you, as you can tell, and you're appreciated by millions, and I'm so happy you're free to do what you're called to do. We all benefit from it. So true, everything you're sharing about this vibrational, empathic experience that we share. It is something anybody can tap into. It's not a closed club. It's not a secret society. You know, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing, open to anyone. And I encourage anybody listening to do read David's books. Go to his website, davidicke.com. It's my go-to place for daily updates and very perceptive array of daily news. That's not to be missed. But thanks so much, and much love to you and Gareth. It's funny, my son runs my website.
Yeah, Gareth and Jamie, they do great work for me, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you. And you know, to paraphrase or slightly change George Carlin's famous line, it's a big club, and you can get in it.
I was thinking the same. Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. And you're already part of it. You just don't know it. Okay. Well, I love you, brother.
You too. Bye.
Soon, man. Thanks again.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into CCN. This unique network is dedicated to free and independent media. CCN was created with the belief that information is the common heritage of all beings, which is why our live stream high-definition broadcast is easily accessible and free to view. If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Having produced over 1,000 shows in 2015, which are all archived on YouTube, we look forward to bringing you more groundbreaking, cutting-edge information in 2016. For more information on what is on, please check out our broadcast guide for weekly updates. CCN broadcasts in multiple languages and features some key voices of our challenging times who are all in pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world. CCN belongs to you, the people, and it is up to you all to keep this network on the air. Please contribute to the Network Support Fund or visit the CCN shop. We thank you all for supporting free and independent media.